sentence just so I can complete a better looking paragraph or a sentence altogether. So 이곳도, in this area. Now, what is this person comparing it to? He's comparing his region 정읍 to 서울, 서울. So you could say something like just as, 서울처럼, just as it did, excuse me, in Seoul. So, of course, it's capitalized. Just as it did in Seoul, the localized torrential downpour, what did it do? 침수시켰죠. It's quite simple. It's one verb. Flooded, flooded. 침수시키다, flooded, flooded. And it ruined a lot of it, so we call it 많은 가옥, which will be translated a number of houses. So altogether, you could say something like, just as it did in Seoul, the localized torrential downpour flooded a number of houses in this area. Now, of course, we can move on to the next sentence by taking a look at 아휴, 저런, 아휴, 저런. It's an expression, right? And in English, we could say something like, oh no, 저런. Now this implies, oh, that was horrible. 안타깝군요. 이런 뜻이잖아요. So you could say something like, that's terrible, or that's horrible, that's horrible. Or you can go even as far as to say, I'm sorry to hear that, I'm sorry to hear that. And they all mean the same thing. That's terrible. That's horrible. I'm sorry to hear that. They would all mean 저런, 안타깝네요. Now let's see what he responds to. 길이 침수되어 교통이 통제되고 출퇴근 지각 사태가 벌어졌죠. Korean's so difficult sometimes. Okay, so 길이 침수되어서 뭐뭐 because of something, right? Because the streets were flooded. We learned just earlier that 침수되다 is flooded, right? So because the streets were flooded, what happened? 교통이 통제됐죠. Now, 교통, we can refer it all together with the noun traffic. Traffic. So traffic was 통제되다. What do you suppose 통제되다 is in English? You could say control or regulated. Regulated. So traffic was regulated and 출퇴근 지각 사태가 벌어졌죠. Now this is specifically happening to people who are getting to work or trying to get home from work. So we have to have the subject people. People. Because they're the ones that are going to be late to work. People were. 지각하다 is literally tardied in English. But to make the sentence flow better, you could say people are, running late. Running late. Which means being tardied to and from work. From work. This means altogether 출퇴근 지각 사태가 벌어졌죠. People are running late to and from work. So altogether we have, because the streets were flooded, traffic was regulated, and people are running late and from work. Now that's an unfortunate disaster, and it actually happened to me too. I had to call in because my car was literally floating down the street. I hope it didn't happen to you. Now how does she respond to this? 트위터에 올라온 사진 봤어요. Now 올라오다, to come up on a website, you could say it came up on Twitter. But instead, you could do it really short and sweet. I saw the pictures on Twitter. 트위터에서 사진을 봤어요. I saw the pictures on Twitter. Simple and sweet, right? And next sentence, please. 순간 서울에서 발생한 우면산 산사태의 악몽이 생각났습니다. Yes, it was quite a sight here and a lot of people were hurt. Now, 생각나다. 생각나다 literally means made me think of, thought of, but in this case, 몸으로 인해서 생각나게 됐잖아요. So, you could say, it reminded me. It reminded me. It means the same thing as 생각나다, but you're being affected by something else. So it reminded me of what? The 악몽. 우면산 산사태의 악몽. 악몽 is literally nightmare, but you could also say horrendous sight. Just because an adjective will help you create a much clearer and much more precise sentence. Horrendous, Mount 우면, 산사태, landslide. 산사태 is referred to as a landslide. So, altogether you could have something like It reminded me of the horrendous Mount Umeon landslide. 어디서 발생한? 서울에서 발생한. That took place in Seoul. Altogether you have It reminded me of the horrendous Mount Umeon landslide that took place in Seoul. Okay, let's continue on to the next slide. 다행히 수해복구 현장에 많은 자원봉사자분들이 찾아와 도움의 손길을 주셨습니다. Thank God. 다행히 is referred to as fortunately. 그리고 많은 자원봉사자분들은 many volunteers. Now, what I want to highlight today is 찾아와서 도움의 손길을 주다. 도움의 손길을 주다 is quite similar in the English language, actually. To extend a helping hand. 도움의 손길을 주다. Extended a helping hand. So, fortunately, many volunteers extended a helping hand. 어디서? 수해복구 현장에서. At. It's a specific site, so you call it at the 복구 현장은요, restoration site라고